This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
Happy Makar Sankaranthi to all the viewers and listeners of Storytellers Cafe. Welcome to yet another New Year's special edition of Storytellers Cafe. Happy Pongal, happy Lori, happy Makar Sankaranthi. Well, the festival, the harvest festival just passed us by. Today is 17th, but when I recorded this show, this was a day before the harvest festival. The nation had geared for the warmth of the Lori bonfire and also to spread the cheer of Makar Sankaranthi and convey greetings of Pongal. It is one of the joyous occasions in our country, in India, and also across the world where all Indians live. You know, Makar Sankaranthi is also known as Makar Sankaranthi, and it is celebrated in various parts of the Indian subcontinent to observe the day which marks the shift of the sun into ever-lengthening days. The festival is a seasonal observance as well as a religious celebration. The days are getting longer and the nights shorter. In winter, the nights were growing longer and the days shorter. But now the reverse is happening slowly. But we all know that Makar Sankaranthi is predominantly a harvest festival and celebrated throughout India, right from north to south and east to west. This is also a festival which is believed as a time for peace and prosperity, and like all festivals, is a great leveler. By that I mean people bond, bury the hatchet with enemies and foes, and try to live in peace. Well, wishing every one of you a very happy Makar Sankaranthi, and I would like to invite or introduce today's guest, who is a Pongal special or a Makar Sankaranthi special. We have in our studios Shilpa Mudbi, wonderful, how do I say? Let me just introduce her. You know, an artist, you know, who's done human service and a lot of research into the folk art forms in Karnataka. Shilpa is a filmmaker, theatre practitioner, vocalist, born and brought up in Bangalore. She completed her master's in filmmaking from the University of Technology, Sydney in 2008 and returned to Bangalore to make films on agriculture, rural development, and women's empowerment for the Karnataka State Department of Agriculture and University of Agricultural Sciences and Karnataka Mahila Smakhya. In November 2014, she worked as a program coordinator of the 10th annual Rangashankara Theatre Festival. She worked as a manager, actor, singer, songwriter for the Indio Nostrum Theatre, a contemporary French Tamil troupe, and represented them at the SMART, that is Strategic Management of the Arts Forum, in 2015. Well, Shilpa Mudbi Kothakota is a first-generation urbanite who identifies herself strongly to her ancestral roots. She has spent several years working in the hinterlands of Karnataka, documenting agrarian lifestyles and cultural politics as a filmmaker. Shilpa also started the Urban Folk Project. She's the creative artist behind the Urban Folk Project, a collective that looks at collating and curating folk knowledge systems. We will get Shilpa to talk more about Urban Folk Project. Currently, Shilpa is a member of the Janapada Academy of Karnataka state government representing Bidar, the northernmost district of Karnataka. She has recently moved out to Gulbarga to further her research in folk music forms of this region. I met Shilpa Mudbi in 2018 in the winter month of November at the Bangalore International Storytelling Festival, where we both were invited. And as I sat that evening watching Shilpa perform Yellama, I here want to take time and quote Viktor E. Frankl, the Holocaust survivor. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Well, as I was sitting completely enraptured in the story of Yellama, Shilpa transported me to a spiritual realm. You know, it was something beyond that auditorium in Bangalore. So that is the power of Shilpa's storytelling. Let me bring Shilpa onto our studios. Shilpa Mudbi, welcome to Storytellers Cafe. It is indeed our privilege, honor to host you on our show.
Hi, Usha. Thank you so much for having me here. It feels like a real pleasure to be here with you on this platform, talking about stories and also making this very special show about Sankaranthi, and as we call it here in North Karnataka, Yelamasi, Yella Amavasi, so to speak. So happy Yelamasi to you.
Thank you, and happy Pongal to you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, can you tell us more about this Yelamasi? You already intrigued me, you know.
So today, my husband and I, we had been invited to another farm. We've moved recently to the town of Gulbarga, and we were invited to go to someone's farm for Yelamasi. And though I remember as a child, we used to go to our village, Mudbi. And in Mudbi, our relatives would take us to where my grandfather's grave is. Most of the farmers, they get buried in their farms. They don't have a specific graveyard. You get buried on your land. So you usually go to that place and you sit down on your mats, all your family gathers, and we have food cooked that is basically from ingredients that are from your land. So if you grow jowar, you're going to make something with jowar. If you grow dal, you're going to make something with dal. The greens that you grow, you're going to make palya or some kind of curry or sabzi with it. So you make these things, and it's a big picnic day. So I was excited to go for today's Yelamasi when we were invited by a very nice family here in Gulbarga. And we saw a very interesting ritual. As children, I'm sure it happened in front of us and I didn't really pay attention. That's what's been really fascinating about my journey over the last 5 years. Things that I've grown up with, I'm finally looking into and finding what those symbols and metaphors and rituals mean to me and my community, and as human beings, how we attach to the work that we do and attach to the land that gives us work and food. So we went to this farm and we saw this very beautiful sight. It's a small ritual where the men who own the farm, I'll share a screen, I can show you a picture and explain. The men in the farm do a puja to 5 stones. So they pick up 5 stones, different sizes, and they establish them right beside each other. Sorry, there's a little bit of...
Take your time. Take your time.
It just worked. There it is. Okay. Can you see it? Okay. So
Yeah.
this is what you see on that farm. When you go to the farm, you usually have the women who are cooking. They find a cozy place under some shade of some trees. They're cooking some food. And the men basically create this. They have 5 stones that represent the 5 Pandavas. Because the Pandavas went to the forest on their Ajnatavasa, they were in the forest for a long time. They grew a special bond with nature, and hence they did this specific puja to please the gods of the forest and all the 4 directions. So these 5 stones are established there. As you see, there are flowers. Then everything that is cooked is mixed all together, made into several portions, 8 and 5. So that's 13 portions are made, and they're given each of these 5 stones are given one portion, and then you do a circle around the land, and you give the other portions are thrown in the direction with some water and some prayers to please the lords of the direction. In all direction you are spreading cheer and joy. What it also does is specific food that is cooked is then thrown into the land. You invite ants and termites and different kinds of worms and probably more enzyme rich soil in one way. So you're also creating a ritual which enhances the land and creates some sort of invitation of nature, like all the birds to come and have what is left. The harvest is already done by now. So this is a ritual to suggest let's give thanks to where we get our food from. And the Pandavas did the same long back, and we continue to do so in their name. That's why today was a very special day for us to sit down with this family and their extended family. All the men had their own little group, and they were drinking and they were chatting, and women were cooking and sharing stories. So it was a very special day to remind us that we all have agrarian roots. We all have roots where one of our ancestors was plowing a farm somewhere, was trying to grow his own food. And there is that connection that we all have with the soil. And while living in the cities, buying from supermarkets, though we understand we are not devoid of that knowledge where this food comes from, the connection that we have to food is very different. A ritual like this certainly made me feel very thankful, look deeper into how not just us, but our ancestors, the Pandavas stand for our ancestors in that sense, because we are following this tradition since the Pandavas, so to speak. So to find that connection that all of us are an ancestry connected to our land, we're rooted to our land, we eat what we grow, and hence we must give back, we must say thanks. So definitely Sankaranthi meant much more to me this year than many other years that we have spent trying to make good food at home. And yes, it's all about food. It's also about food even here. But when you are in the land and you see those stones and we make those stones come alive, we put the vibhuti and we make them Dharmaraja, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva, and you're suddenly a part of the story. Yeah. So happy Yelamasi to everyone again.
Yes, happy Yelamasi to everyone. Wonderful, Shilpa. What a beautiful, it's a story, right? And it's a story I haven't heard. This in Karnataka worshipping the Pandavas. And these are basically the agrarian community, which is special to the agrarian, to the farmers in Karnataka who worship Yelamasi, and this is how the festival is celebrated.
Yes.
It's lovely.
It is. And also there is this connection that we have been finding as people with free speech and responsibilities to stand with the farmers, with what's happening politically, what's happening to farmers across this country. And when you do a ritual like this, you're also closer to them. You're also closer to a community that has worked for your food. And hence rituals become important. Even someone for a long time who has tried to tell herself that, no, I don't really believe in God, but I believe in the power of a ritual, how ritual brings people together, how it bonds us as community, as family, as extended family. And farmers especially, These many years, I've traveled for years around Karnataka making films, and I would never go hungry if I was shooting a farm. Never. If I went into a city, if I had to do a interview of someone in a corporate office, there is likelihood that canteen shut before I got to the canteen. You know, but in a farmer's house, there is never going to be a point where they'll say we've run out of food. They will always have food for another person. And that's why women in those families also have this sense of pride. You know, they're giver of life in more than one way. Not just mothers to their children, but they give life to what's around them. Like they learn to recycle, they learn to bring the energies from the farm and give it back to the farm. Their roles in these small rituals also become very interesting to study. So it's very fortunate that I've come to a point in my life where I'm able to find this culture and find my role and my vision of how I should live within this culture. You know, what role should I have as a person in Gulbarga? Am I just an observer? Am I like David Attenborough looking at chimpanzees, or am I going to enter? Am I going to make this meal and call you over and say, come have food with me on my farm? Like, so great many questions at this point in time. It's really a wonderful Sankaranthi this year.
Wonderful. You're definitely not an onlooker. You get down into the trenches, I know. So that brings me to my next question, Shilpa. You have a very interesting trajectory. What stood out was you studied in Sydney and then you came back. You grew up in the city of Bangalore. What is it that if you look back in the last 10 years or 12 years, 2008, graduated,
Yeah.
how did all this come about? I'm sure we are eager to listen to you. So
Yeah.
over to you.
Sure. I'm going to try and sum it up because I think it's harder usually for a person to try and narrate one's own story. It's hard to get that kind of objectivity, I guess. But I'm going to give it a shot. So I studied in Australia. I studied how to be a filmmaker. I was quite certain, even before I finished my course, that I wasn't going to live on in Australia. Because as a storyteller, as a person who wanted to tell stories through film and theater, I did not see myself working in a country where I was someone from the margins. Like you, quite simply to put it, I would probably have to wait for a brown part to be written into a film to either act in it, or I would have to find years of working in the industry to see myself as a director or a writer. Maybe I took the easy way out in that sense. I felt that it made more sense to tell stories in my perspective to the people who I'd grown up with, the cultural context that I grew up with. I wanted to tell stories to that audience. So I moved back to India for that specific reason. I didn't really see myself live in Australia as an artist. Because as an artist, I thought I also had a lot of work to do, which could only come from the context that I was working with, I was living in. Being a first generation urbaner, I knew my father had studied in a small town and come from a small village. My grandmother had never seen a town till my dad got a job in the government. So it's been a very uphill story for them. And me being in a privileged space that I am, when I went abroad and I understood what it took to make films, I wanted to come back and tell stories that were not being told, or the ones that I did not see on the big screen, on the television screen. And quite simply, I think more than fiction, it attracted me to just watch reality, which was so alive, bubbling with action, so to speak, in comparison to what I experienced in Australia. I never felt like I was an Australian, so I was an outsider watching, Australian life. So I felt I could engage more here. When I came back, I definitely knew I had done the right thing. So I made films for a long time, documentary films, films on agriculture. And what I found, like what I was telling you, Usha, is you travel into the hinterlands and you really see the the bada dil, the big heart of this country. It's in the farmlands, it's in the rural spaces, it's in how vibrant our culture is not something that you see in the metropolitan. It's outside the metropolitan that you start to see it. Not to say that folk does not exist in the city, because the city also is made of small little towns. So yes, some of it remains, some of it disappears, dissipates, morphs, becomes something else. What I found interesting is the connection that I was missing, even in Australia, feeling like an alien in some way. And also in the city, feeling like my identity as an urbaner was something that I had to decide on a daily basis, because the life that I lived at home, like my grandmother or my father, they had a very different context of what it meant to be in Karnataka, or what it meant to be from Bidar, or what it meant to be a Madiga, a scheduled caste person. So I think growing up in a convent and not feeling the same history as they did, I always had this part of me that was wondering what part of me is Dalit, even though my father is Dalit and my mother is Dalit. And what does that mean? What does this caste identity mean? So there was also this in my head that and having all my friends hate on reservations, So not being able to fight any battle and not being able to take any side, I think I was just trying to find out myself what it meant to come from a space other than the one I was living in. I think that's where my journey really began. So it was going through these films, even though it was about agriculture, it would be for me more about the observing of the woman's body, about how they dealt with their bodies, how they walked, or how their gait was, how they spoke, how different their voices felt compared to ours, how they sang. And of course, I've been singing from a very young age with my mother, my grandmother, my family. All of us used to sit and record songs on little tape recorders. So in general, my entire family, we loved music. And I was a part of the school choir, and then I was a part of a college band called Pratidhwani with some wonderful girls. And then I went on to being in theatre for some time. I worked in Rang Shankara as a volunteer when Rang Shankara first started. What a beautiful time that was. So with all of these experiences and exposures, there was singing always in my life. I didn't really imagine myself to become a singer per se in the conventional sense, but I always knew music would be a part of my life. I always sang, even though I chose not to learn music, classical music. I think my parents tried, I tried. I didn't stick to it, but I knew music would not leave me. Maybe classical music did not sit well with me, but maybe that's just because I was lazy, or I did not have, I don't know what the reason is. But I don't have any regrets, because the voices that have taught me are not necessarily those of gurus who sat down and said, okay, this is how you sing. It is really from the art of observation, of understanding what has become of our voice once a microphone came, once we started speaking on our cell phones, once we started singing a different genre of music, or started speaking a different language as well. What happened to your own language? How does accent play a role? So these are the things that I started working deeply with, unconsciously actually, for a long time. And then I started recreating those musical patterns when I started working with Rangashankara. After Rangashankara, I moved to Pondicherry. I worked in a theatre, a French Tamil theatre, where there were some wonderful teachers and workshops that happened on voice. Also Manipur Kalakshetra workshops. There are certain teachers around this country who work with the body and the voice very differently. And that gave me a paradigm shift as to how to look at the voice itself as an element, a key element of an actor's body. The voice itself is like the soul of this body, and how the voice represents the rest of it. So while I started collecting different kinds of experiences, this is a complicated story to tell, because I, quite simply, I should just say, I didn't stick to any job because, yeah, I just didn't stick to any job for more than 3 or 4 years. I worked as an activist. I worked as a media consultant for an NGO, as journalism teacher at Mount Carmel, and then I taught journalism and documentary filmmaking to children in this college, Samvada Baduku College, mainly disadvantaged kids from different parts of the state. It's all of these experiences made me who I am, politically aware, um, socially empathetic, and musically greedy, just so I was constantly listening to all kinds of music. Like even now, if you open my phone and you look at my iMusic, there'll be everything from jazz to Mongolian throat singing to Korean folk music and everything. Yeah, not just K-pop, but I meant Korean folk music. But a lot of different kinds of musical experiences made me work on my body, on my voice over time to tell myself, okay, I'm an artist now. It's hard because you're working as an administrator. You don't really want to call yourself an artist. But at some point I said, okay, I'm going to work on my voice. I'm working as an actor. I think I should start calling myself an artist. And I'm just going to go back to collecting music from my land. So there was something that happened within Indian Ostrom. My director was putting a play together, and it was about the Sri Lankan genocide. And the Sri Lankan genocide, in the genocide, there were a lot of people who died: Indians, Sri Lankans, Sinhalese, Buddhists. And in this play, all of them who died turned up on the shore, the banks of this river. And there was a mother waiting to take in all the souls and console them and let them know there are no borders here. You're home. Relax. And he said, I need someone to bring me a deity from their roots. And Yelama is the deity that I started devising on. Even though my connection with Yelama was not very strong at that point. I remember growing up watching these plays with my grandmother. They're overnight plays that happen in Mudbi. So I used to go for these plays as a child. I was fascinated. As a grown-up, I used to exoticize and wonder, wow, this is so crazy. But the more I engage with it, I think it strengthened my belief in why it was important to invest in a form like Yelamanata, why folk forms are important. So I think I went in because of Kumaran. I started devising. That's my director. Because of Kumaran, I started devising about Yelama, and then it was not enough to devise about her. I needed to know her. I needed her to enter me. I needed her to curse me or love me or hate me. Like I needed a real interaction with this deity. I just felt like this severe imposter syndrome. Yeah. The more shows that I did, I was like, I cannot bring her to stage again. I think I need to go find out for myself who she is to me, to my people, to my community. So I came back home to Bangalore and I told my husband, okay, are you ready to leave your job? Like, let's go traveling for some time. Let's just hang. Yeah. I've gone on my artistic journey and you've gone on your accounting journey. So let's just take a break. And we started traveling and we haven't stopped since. Honestly, that's how I would summarize that, because we started traveling, we found her, we found another deity, we found another form, we found some artist, we found some wonderful lady who fed us and fed us such good food that we didn't leave for 2 days. So it is such stories that actually made up our motive to continue living this life, engaging with what is in the margins and choosing not to be in the center, choosing to be in the margins with them. So this constant otherizing that happens while you are in the city, that I am from the city and you are from a space that is not a city, and hence we are different in the way we seek aesthetics, what kind of aesthetics we have, or our class consciousness or language. All of this, I think, creates more layers for you to break down, to reach someone and say, okay, I want to learn from you. I hear you. and I'm in love with you, and I need to receive from you. And the more layers you have on, the more, if you go in with a camera, that is yet another filter. Like, just for us, we realized we didn't want any filters. We wanted to engage and realize that the folk knowledge systems are not seen as knowledge systems. They're seen as mere trinkets of culture that attract you in the corner of your eye. But the knowledge system within these art forms, and what they say about us and our histories as human beings, is invaluable. It actually makes you more empathetic and better listeners to go back and listen to these stories, and not just listen to it as a story, but listen to it with your whole body, with your history, with your cultural identity. Listen with on that standpoint, and then magic happens, really. So that's what brought me back to folk, traveling, being in theater, realizing that theater did not have too many North Karnataka storylines or stories. It did not talk about the feudal system here. So, how do people get invisibilized is also that you don't see them within your art forms. Those art forms go missing, and hence those people go missing. So it was important for me to come back to this region and sing these songs. Choose not to speak the Bangalore Kannada and speak this Kannada, so that people here did not actually feel ashamed of this Kannada. So I went online and I started doing work during the COVID. Um, After doing 2 years of classes in the park, just teaching people how to not judge yourself as a good singer or as a bad singer, but take on this idea that within folk, nobody is a good singer or bad singer. It's about singing together, creating a frenzy, tripping out together, clapping, just going nuts. Yeah. It's about that. It's not really about appreciating and saying, wow, that was amazing. Of course, we need classical music. Of course, we need music that makes you sit down and just goes inwards. But then there is another music that externally all of us bond, where all of our need to be together, breathe together, clap together, creates a different kind of energy that we need so much these days, especially after the COVID. Not just traffic should be back with a bang. It should be how we come together. It's like, my God, I am starved of human connection. Let's come and let's join. And that's what happened today for me, Usha. I've actually had such a good day just being in the farm and eating with people. And it's really magic. Yeah, we need
Yes.
magic like this, I guess.
Absolutely magic, imagination. Shilpa, I can see the magic in you, the energy in you, which is even through this technical, or what do I say, through the laptop or through the electronic waves, is definitely reaching out to me. It is palpable. So, what I was just thinking that, you having paid attention to your roots is the key to your connection. You have been connected, and connection is very important, for us. Absolutely. And since you spoke about music, and I'm sure our listeners and I too, because you took me into a spiritual realm. Let me see. I was into a meditative state while listening to Yalama, and the way the process you began with all your singers sitting in the stage in the very traditional format. So, can you just give us, can you sing for us?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Um, I'm wondering what I should sing for you. There is a form specifically, now that I'm in Gulbarga, I'm looking to do a research on a form called Gigi Pada. And Gigi Pada is like Kavali. It's a battle on gender. What's interesting about this form, it's not a form of a specific community. It's not a Kuruba form or a Madiga form. It's not caste based. It's quite a secular form. There are teams from Lamani community, which is like a nomadic pastoral gypsy community, and then you have people from lower caste, upper caste, Muslims. They have different teams come from different villages. They come to either a dargah or a temple either or. A lot of times, even in my village, it's more often a dargah than a temple. I'll tell you why. And so these two teams come together, and one sings for the woman and one sings for the man. So it's like playing trump card. Like, see, my God said this, and this, so hence man is great. And so the other community will be like, but in my community, my female God, she did this, and hence women are great. So it's that kind of debate. So usually there are a lot of bhajans within Gigi Pada, but there's also a lot of asking of questions. So say, for example, this is a song for Sharada Devi. Okay. Sharada Devi Adi Shakti, Sharada Devi Adi Shakti, Sharada Devi Adi Shakti. Ghallu ghullu ghallu ghullu ghejjiಯ ನುಡಿಸುತ್ತ ಬಂದಾಳ ಸರಸ್ವತಿಯಗಿಯಗ ಆಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯಾ ಏ ಘಲ್ಲು ಗುಲ್ಲು ಗಲ್ಲು ಗುಲ್ಲು ಘಜ್ಜಿಯ ನುಡಿಸುತ್ತ ಬಂದಾಳ ಸರಸ್ವತಿಯಗಿಯಗ ಆಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯಾ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ ಹೇ ಬೆಳಕ ಸಿರಿಮಾನ್ ಕತ್ತಲಿಗಿ ಬಸವ ದೊಡ್ಡ ತೋಳ ಶ್ರುತಿಯಗಿಯಗ ಗಾಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯಾ. So there's usually a lot of these giyas are team specific. So some team might go giya 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 giya, and some will go gi 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 giya giya giya. So it's each team has its own signature gigging, and that basically continues into the song. So for example, I know you watched me tell the Renuka story. And Renuka in that story, quite often in the play form, she's like this Abla Nari. She's trying very hard to please the husband, and then she's trying very hard to please the son, and then she finally gives up and she says, I don't care, I don't want to be with both these men. But in Gigi Pada, she turns fierce. There is this one woman called Budhava. I want to learn from her. She's another super mentor I wish to have. She's a Gigi Pada singer, and she was listening to us talk about Parshurama. And on that day when she did her Gigi, she said something on the lines of, Renuka is telling Parshurama, Parshurama, ನೀ ನಿನ್ನ ಮಿಸಿ ತಿರುಬೇಡ ಮರಿಬೇಡ ನೀ ಬಂದಿದಿ ನನ್ನ ಉಚ್ಚಿ ಹೇಳಾಗ, she says. So, which basically means, Parshurama, don't upturn your mustache and walk around. Don't forget that you came out in my shit and piss. So, it shocked me. It shocked me. It never felt, I never thought Renuka could turn that fierce in the folk interpretation, but she does, because the women are that fierce. So Renuka, of course, has to represent these women. She's the representation of the women whose stories make her story. So when you have those lines, it shakes you. It makes you realize that in this form, even the deities become fierce. They're down to battle. They're not walking the ramp and looking nice. They're just down to uglies. There is one bit where she says, if you as a man are so proud of that mustache of yours, why should I cover my breasts and walk around? Shouldn't I flaunt my breasts and walk around? She says. And it's that kind of fierceness in that form that really attracted me to that form. I went just slipping out of Yelamnata and into Gigi Pada in terms of where I was in my head, I was like, I want that Renuka. We are in need of that Renuka today. As feminists, as people who are fighting of rapes that are getting covered up by the government, we don't want Renuka who's like, do whatever, but next life I will do better. It's
No way.
no way.
No
way.
way.
We need this Renuka. Yeah, we need, and I think all that inspiration I'm finding in folk, which is so it's enamoring. Every day you find another deity, another saint who has broken down the body like no other for you. Your convent education didn't do that for you. Hanging around in the clubs didn't do it for you. Wearing short clothes didn't do it for you. But there is a prose somewhere that hits you so hard like a slap. And you're like, I get it. You have this aha moment.
Absolutely, the light bulb moment. For me, the light bulb moment is happening every time I invite an Indian storyteller onto Storytellers Cafe. Shilpa, when I started, I was just telling stories for 15 years. Never knew that there is a profession. But then once I got a kind of exposure to the world storytelling, then I became a little reserved. I thought, oh, look at the way the Westerners have command over the English language and the way they weave tales, the description, the way they go about it. But then over the years, I have overcome that initial, maybe the reserve. And as I approach storytellers, I'm just wondering what's wrong with me. India has amazing,
Right.
not only folklorists, storytellers
Right.
who are. Who are absolutely master storytellers, who really can transform, spellbind, and hold the audience,
Mm.
and it's making me more and more proud in our own in our own storytellers who are there, and you are able to reach out to them in this modern era. And thanks to COVID, and because Storytellers Cafe happened, that I'm really interested more than my telling a story. I see the different form, the way, like you said, the voice, the instruments that they use to tell stories, and I'm learning from every little interview or every little episode of Storytellers Cafe. It's just beautiful, and I just say, I would tell all the listeners who are listening to this show particularly that be very proud. You have a wonderful tradition and culture. Uphold it, and
Right.
delve deeper into it to get to know it.
Yeah.
I've grown up in the city, and I really haven't much as I would like to leave everything and go and explore things in the hinterland, so to speak. Maybe I cannot, but who says? There's nothing like cannot.
Yeah.
You
You're
cannot. You can.
Yelamasi with me probably next year.
Yes, yes, I would love to visit you in Bidar and Gulbarga, and you're planning to host a festival, and we must have an indigenous storytelling festival.
Right.
So, anyway, that will happen. So, my next question is, I just want you to tell our viewers about the Urban Folk Project,
Right.
which is amazing what you're doing, Shilpa.
Thank you, Usha. Urban Folk Project started 3 years ago when Adi and I were just traveling around the state. We found such different scapes within Karnataka. Like you have the coastal side, and the rituals there are so unique to the coast. And then you move to the center of Karnataka, and you have a specific ideas, a certain aesthetic within the Shumaka belt. And then you move further down south where the Mysore belt is. The Mysore belt has a completely different, again, aesthetic. And then you move up into this dry land, which we call Hyderabad Karnataka or Kalyan Karnataka. And it seems like a whole other country itself. So when we were traveling, we first started looking at documenting what kind of folk forms there were in Karnataka, not knowing what a deep, deep, deep sea that is. We imagined that we'll go to every state, I mean, every district and say, oh, what are the folk forms here? 1, 2, and 3. So hence we will shoot this, and this, and put it up with a description. That was the whole idea. It was not that easy for several reasons. One, because if there is Bhutakola in a certain district in Udupi, there might be Bhutakola in another district and yet at another district, and they might be called something else. They might have slight mutations to it and have different versions. So when you put down something into words, you are doing what folk as a form has not done for many generations. Folk is meant to be contemporary. Folk is meant to be, well, I'm no one to say what it's meant to be, but I'm trying to express what I think it is for me. Folk is something that we live within the zeitgeist of this time. What is happening to us and our contemporary state, represented within our music, is what I would label folk. Most folk music is such that you have spaces where you can enter and put in your own plight. A lot of domestic songs, for example. So I think what I'm trying to say is within our journeys, we found that there was so much of variety, so much of depth, and so many genres. We said it's more important to kind of zone in after 1 year of traveling, but still be open to all the kind of different collections and how we could curate experiences which we don't get to see in the urban sphere. That's how Urban Folk Project started. So Adi and I registered like a small proprietorship, and we started working. We started doing classes in Cubbon Park. Whatever music we collected in our journeys, we would teach them for free, including my grandmother's songs that I collected over the last few years. Because when Aji remembers a song, she doesn't remember the entire song at one go. A lot of songs that she has taught me, I still don't know if they're full songs, so to speak. I don't think there is an idea of a full song either. Like some songs just continue as they travel. They tend to get longer. So I know some parts of some songs which I teach in the park, and we have a discourse about it. What is happening in this song? Why is it being sung in certain way? Or when is it sung? What communities perform it? Or what is the activity that is performed with it? That's how Urban Folk Project started. Just being able to be a bridge. And I feel I'm in a unique position to do so, where I understand Bidri, I understand a little bit of Kannada, a little bit of Hindi, a little bit of Marathi, and I'm in this region where it's a hybrid culture, it's a border culture. You have all of these cultures kind of mixing and creating smaller nuances in the cultural scape. So it's about understanding, recording, creating experiences for people to be for people to understand the rural scape through this musical lens. What is happening through that song, what each song does, or understanding any song is about understanding where it comes from, who is singing it, what is the myth behind it, what are the kind of deities, and in that pantheon, who else happens to appear as you go deeper. Like when we started working, it was Yelama, now it's Matangi, Ambabai, Turjaba. It's endless, the number of deities, right? So that's how I think we came about Urban Folk Project, knowing that there's so much happening. So there has to be one place where we can put things and decide how to curate it. That's how I think we came about Urban Folk Project. So we have Aditya, that's my husband, and Asim, who's a professor at Azim Premji University. He's also an Ambedkarite and a feminist, and he was like, yeah, I think this is the new way of activism, where you look at long-term change and you change with music, you change with love. We are done. I felt at some point I was done screaming on the streets for justice. I think I can sing for 6 hours, but scream for 6 hours, maybe not.
No. You don't have to do it. I think there are different ways of making yourself heard. And
Right.
that's what you're doing, and in a wonderful way, because the nation is hearing you. Not Arnab Goswami, where the nation wants to hear, but the nation wants to hear Shilpa Mudbi. Shilpa, can I say that the Urban Folk Project is to popularize and to also promote the folk culture, the tradition, the rich tribal culture, stories. Is that all comes under that? And
It is.
and you also work with gender. So can you just tell us briefly about, because that was another thing which completely I was very intrigued, and because to be openly doing something, and that you did it, in the festival. I saw you talking. So can you just tell us about it? Because we are looking at maybe opening a 30-minute slot for the LGBTQ community, on Bharat FM. So, because it is a very inclusive radio channel, and I think the way forward is to get to hear their voices.
Right.
Everyone
Right.
needs to be heard. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. I wish you a lot of luck, and I'm sure it's going to be very exciting because most of my learning, even within Yelama's work, came from the transgender community. I think I don't have to do much as a feminist. The story and the telling of the story does that for me. Like Yelama and other stories, you were taking Jamadagni and Parshurama, who were massive macho characters, and then basically diminishing them as small subset of roles who are irritating to Renuka's life. So basically bringing Renuka out of her own story and giving her space. That's what the story does. Just like I think I remember watching Du Saraswati. She's an academician who does something called Sangatimi Ramayana. It's like this Ajji who's telling you a story about Ramayana and how she scolds Rama and Lakshmana, and she says things like, ಹುಡುಗರಿಗೇನು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಕತ್ತಿ ವರ್ಸೆ. So she says, boys, you know how they are. They were talking about thrones and swords, and Sita was alone. What is wrong with that, Lakshmana? He would have taken his wife also. No, both of them would have put yelle adike and put some pan, and they would have walked and they would have talked. Planning only. So when she doesn't have to do much, it's actually figuring out who Santimi is, who that Ajji is, and what kind of life she has led for her to take that stand about Ramayana. And for me, that is what Yelama's story does, where I'm able to say Jamadagni was a hot piece of ass. She fell for it. And you're actually pushing aside that intellect. One of my friends' mothers came up to me and she picked a fight with me. She's like, "Why do you belittle Jamadagni so much? He is one of the Saptarishis. Of course, he has attitude. If he doesn't have, who would have?" And I even loved that conversation. I loved that conversation because it was interesting to see how much we have internalized these images of these men and what they're meant to be and what their roles are in society. And when you take away that role, the one who's embodied it suddenly is like, hold on, I've lived this. don't do that. So I play the role of a disruptionist. I don't think I'm a very pleasing artist. I don't like people to actually love all of it. If they loved all of it, I'll be like, wait, I went wrong. It was supposed to.
Yeah, isn't that the role of a storyteller, to bring different perspectives to a story and to kind of nudge your audience
Exactly.
to think that there is another way to look at this story?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Yelama's story does for me, Usha. I didn't really have to paint myself as a feminist or anything. It's just that story. And suddenly women started coming up to me and saying, "You're not married, right?" I mean, I can't imagine you being married. And this is my husband. He's standing next to me. It's a proud moment for me and for him, actually, for having accepted this story. Also because we were a couple who are openly trying to tell people we don't want to have children, stop forcing it down our throat. And here there is a myth that presents itself where this woman is so crazy to have a child, she doesn't mind dying for it. So I think I brought my own kind of spite to it, where there were so many times where I had to zip my mouth and say, okay, it's going to be a very long night if I try to explain to this auntie why I don't want to have children, or why I don't want to tell this Ajja, So all of that I felt kind of had a space to come out in the story, where I kind of have the right to yell at Renuka also for having done something like that. As a storyteller, why did you push yourself so much? Did you really have to push yourself so much? So it was interesting. I think the story helped me voice my frustration, but at the same time, it came to me as a realization: this is what the story has done for several generations. Why a folk oral tale doesn't have any original is because it's moving. It's like a collective dream. It's constantly moving with us. What is happening to me is happening to her. What is happening to you is going to get sucked into the story and happen to her. So
Yes.
she's like this voodoo doll, she's going to get pricked and killed and torn apart.
Sure, there's a transference happening. No, Shilpa, what you say is right. One has to get out of the comfort zone, and especially a storyteller has to be vulnerable, has doesn't want to be boxed in, and
Right.
you're being very bold, and that is what we need. It's wonderful. You're doing a fantastic job. All my blessings and good wishes to you. As time is not our friend and time is running on, I want to ask you, what does future? You've shifted recently to Gulbarga.
Right.
So you've really come into the hinterland, to the border of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and I don't know, maybe I don't think so, Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra. You still have
Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh.
Yes. So, what does the future? How is the future looking to you?
It's exciting, Usha, because I think I've made a jump now in the deep end. I was working as a folk research artist from Bangalore, and now I have given up that Bangalore bit. I have chosen not to be in Bangalore. Also, for my own good, I thought we wanted to lead a healthier lifestyle, get more control over our food. There was always this kind of wonderful dreams that we had in our head. But when we finally said we had a community, we are willing to work with community, I think it gave us the strength to say we'll land up anywhere, we'll crack in culturally, we'll sing at the temple if we have to, and we'll enter and we'll live the lives that they want us to. We won't say we have a fancy farmhouse outside this village that we have nothing to do with, but we'll teach the children, we'll bring on the women, we'll figure out what battles are there and what battles we have to adopt. But let's just go in, because as that's what we had a problem in the city, that we're disenfranchised. We don't know what our neighbors are doing, or we don't care enough as to what's happening in the same building. And we didn't really want to live that life anymore, especially after we started working with folk culture and songs and
Uh,
so
yeah, Shilpa.
um,
Yeah, lost you there for a moment. And integration is the word, and you're integrating into the
yes,
community.
that's
Wonderful,
what I see.
wonderful.
So we have a 2 acre piece of land. So what Adi and I plan to do is uh, we want to call it Janavana, which is people's forest, and we want to grow a food forest and a small space which is going to be a lab for folk artists to come, find new students, leave behind material, record podcasts. Probably you can have more sessions like these, and I'll bring all my teachers to speak to you on different sessions.
Yeah.
So that's the dream, Usha. I just want to spend my life finding more meaningful connections, interested mentors who'll teach me, find a new generation of youngsters who'll want to learn and look at the instrument beyond the connection of caste, community, all of this. If any, like Bharatanatyam today exists as a form, a reputed form, a well understood form with good patronage. Okay, maybe artists don't have that much great patronage right now, I mean, COVID and all that. But what I mean to say is it's an understood, established form because it stopped being that of a certain group. We said now everyone's willing to learn, everyone's willing to teach. Now it's open for everyone to learn. And I think that needs to happen to a lot of the forms that also come from marginal communities. That
Absolutely.
will also bring up the dignity of these communities. The sense of identity of these communities will improve so that they don't have to put up a new Kannada for them to be acceptable. To have faith in their own music, own language, that happens when you have artists saying, hey, we're doing good, This is a great to be.
We are doing good. In fact, in my conversations with you, Shilpa, because I was trying to chase the shaman whom I met 10 years ago in Bangalore. at the Fireflies Ashram, we had an indigenous storytelling festival, or the acoustic traditional, 80. But
Nice.
I'm unable to get in touch with Salil Mukhia, who's another wonderful singer and a shaman as well, and a great storyteller. So when I spoke to you, I would love to bring indigenous tellers onto this platform and to listen to their story, because I tell you, it is so interesting and so wonderful to be in that space and listen to such folklores that you don't know, maybe not written about, but definitely written in their community. And Salil had also brought out a book of all the stories from the Eastern Himalayas.
Oh,
I have a copy of that, yes. But somehow I'm trying to chase him. I don't know where he is. And hopefully, in all that tracing, I said I have to get you. And then you told me that you'll connect me to other tellers. And hopefully, we can bring them on to Storytellers Cafe.
we should, Usha. There is actually something that I would like to say about that. There is within Karnataka, I don't know if this happens in Tamil Nadu, a lot of people are unwilling to share their knowledge in any other language other than Kannada. This is also something that restricts
Okay.
art. This, I don't know if this happens in Tamil, where maybe one person will sing in Tamil and explain in English, and they will get a lot of slack for speaking English at all. Why are you speaking in English will be the thing. And this is a language politics that we need to cross, because the minute any kind of box enters the folk space, then there is no transference. You're making more barricades rather than passages. And I feel no matter what folk, if you are able to take a Tamil folk tale and bring it to an audience which is non-Tamil, it's wonderful. I think we should create more joy by sharing rather than trying to be fanatics about what language we should function in, what language we should speak in, what language we should speak in, what sing in, not sing in. It's becomes quite complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because like, we have Kannada films and English films, and now there are just only Kannada and English. There is no, something that's in between anymore.
Yeah.
That's
For growth to happen, you have to break out of the shackle, not to limit yourself. And that is what, people like us, storytellers, are doing and should do more. So may our tribe increase. And thank you so much, Shilpa. Would you like to say anything, parting word to the listeners of Storytellers Cafe? Because we will bring you back again, because I want you to do the Yellama story. Uh, or any other story that's in the offing, that you are offering, because that itself needs an hour or two to listen to that story with your singing and with all the, um, the
I
other instruments that go with it.
don't know if I have any apt passing words, but I will definitely say this. I think what I've learned through the COVID is that we have, as humans, learned to connect that much more, be it through a platform, like a radio show or a podcast or a Instagram meet or that live and this live. Maybe it's okay to say we've also overdone it, but I'm so glad that as humans we've told ourselves, no, you can't just sit at home and wallow. We have to go out and do work. Even though I don't have the satisfaction of looking the audience in the eye and performing to them, I'll still perform because that's what I do, and that's what we have to continue doing. So to all the artists out there, it's a great time. Even if you are still in lockdown, if you are still, it's still a great time to reach out and do work that is just going to be like mist in the air. You're just fragrant and you're blooming and blossoming constantly. May more people receive your good nature and your talent. That's I'd like to say to everybody who's performing, and to the audience, I'd just like to say thank you for watching, thank you for being here, thank you for engaging. May more of these sessions come by, and for my teachers to come and be a part of such a session. I would really look forward to doing something like that.
Thank you so much, Shilpa. Storytellers Cafe, on behalf of Bharat FM, is indeed very, very honored to have you in our studios and to present to the global Indian diaspora that India has such uh, talent, come and see us. And as Harvest Festival, Pongal, Makar Sankaranthi is all about new beginnings. So let us move forward, new
Right.
beginnings, and leave the past behind and move forward with renewed energy. And please, friends, do stay safe, stay masked in cities, don't get into crowds, and do wash your hands and take care of yourself and have a safe Makar Sankaranti. So that's it, and it's a wrap up. Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Dear listeners,
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.